You wake up 10 years from now in a life that looks exactly how you planned. Same apartment, same coffee mug, same morning routine down to the minute, and yet something feels off. There's a heaviness behind your eyes that sleep can't fix. A silence in the room that no noise can drown. You smile like you're supposed to, but you don't feel it. You sit on the edge of your bed and it hits you. You've been living on autopilot. The life you thought you wanted feels like someone else's skin. And then you see me, the version of you that still had time, still had hunger, still believed that change was possible. And I'm asking you one question, the only question that ever mattered. Are you proud of how we got here? Because I've been writing your story with my choices, and you've been watching, not judging, just living with the consequences. You saw the days I said, not today. You felt the ache every time I chose comfort over growth. You witnessed the moments I looked in the mirror and walked away from myself. Now the mirror is showing me you. Not as a stranger, but as an answer. This isn't about guilt, it's about accountability. Because whether you know it or not, you are always becoming. Even when you're standing still, you're becoming. That's the terrifying part. We think life changes in big dramatic moments, but it doesn't. It changes on Wednesday mornings in tiny decisions that echo through the years. That version of you, the one staring back at me, won't remember the excuses I made. He'll live with the results. So let me ask you again before this day slips away like all the others. When the future finally catches up with you, will you be proud of what you see? Or will you look into the mirror and wonder why I stopped trying when it still mattered? Chapter 2, The Ghost of Potential. There's a version of you who never backed down. He didn't wait for the perfect moment. He started with what he had. He failed, yes, but he grew. And now you feel him sometimes, in quiet moments. In the hesitation before a decision. In the ache you can't name. He doesn't shout, he doesn't punish, he waits. He's the ghost of potential. And he haunts not with memories, but with possibilities. Not with what you lost, but what you never dared to claim. You see him in the night you closed your laptop instead of writing the first line. In the moment you turned away from the conversation you were meant to have. In the version of you that stayed quiet when everything in your chest screamed to speak. And the worst part, he doesn't need to be angry. Because he knows something you try to forget. The longer you delay, the easier it gets to stay where you are. And the easier it gets, the further you drift. There's a man out there who lived the life you were meant to. Not because he was better, but because he didn't wait. You become a ghost not by failing, but by fading. By letting your own potential go unanswered. And if you ignore that ache long enough, one day you'll look in the mirror and see a face you recognize but don't admire. That's when you'll feel it. The cold realization that this was preventable. That somewhere long ago there was a choice. And you walked past it. This is your chance to choose differently. To feel that ache and move anyway. To see the ghost and walk toward him instead of away. Because every day you hesitate, he steps further into the life you could have had. And if you keep waiting, you'll wake up and realize you didn't just meet the ghost of potential, you became him. Chapter 3, The Silence of Meaning. There's a moment that doesn't feel like a breakdown, it feels like nothing. You're not in pain. You're not at war with yourself, you're just quiet, detached. Stuck in the soft paralysis of autopilot. You go through the motions, you tick the boxes, you answer the emails, you eat the meals. And somewhere between the clicks and scrolls, a question rises, is this it? Not the loud crisis people talk about, the silent kind. The kind where meaning doesn't disappear, it just stops showing up. You don't remember when you lost it. You just realize you haven't felt it in a while. And so you start asking dangerous questions. What if none of this matters? What if legacy is just a trick to keep us busy until we die? What if purpose is just a story we invented so we wouldn't collapse under the weight of our own insignificance? And that's where I was. Not angry, not depressed, just exhausted by the possibility that I was building a life made of hollow victories. Until one night I found a journal I had stopped writing in. It was buried under unopened mail, marked with coffee stains and forgetfulness. I flipped through it like I was reading someone else's memories. And there, on a nearly empty page, in handwriting that looked tired but determined, I'd written 6 words: "Don't let this be your ending." I don't remember writing them, but I remember how it felt to read them. It was like hearing a voice I'd buried calling out from a cave. A reminder that I used to believe in something, that I wasn't always numb. That voice didn't give me answers. It didn't give me hope. It gave me a choice. To continue drifting into the arms of resignation, or to return to the man who once believed this life could mean something. Ernest Becker once said, "Guilt results from unused life, from the unlived in us," and I felt that. I wasn't carrying the guilt of mistakes. I was carrying the weight of everything I hadn't dared to live. So I did something simple. I opened the window. I let the cold air sting my face. And I whispered, "I'm still here." That was the first honest sentence I'd spoken to myself in months. Sometimes you don't need a breakthrough. You just need to stop pretending that numbness is peace. And that's when meaning started to return, not loudly, not all at once, but in fragments. In the decision to sit with discomfort. In the willingness to be unfinished. In the small, private promise to not go numb again. Because if my future self is watching, he doesn't want perfection. He just wants to see me try again. And trying honestly, stubbornly, even clumsily is how we begin again. Chapter 4, The Unfinished Letter. Every day you write a sentence in the story of who you'll become. You may not see the pen in your hand, but it's there. In the choices, the pauses, the hesitations, the small braveries no one claps for. And this letter? It's never going to be finished. Not because you failed to complete it, but because becoming is never over. Farrokhzad said, "No matter what age we die at, we will always have unfinished sentences." That's the cost of becoming someone real. You will never be able to say it all. There will always be more inside you than you can express in this life, and that's not tragedy. That's proof that you were alive. Carl Jung once wrote, "We meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life. But to recognize yourself beneath those disguises, you have to peel them away one by one. The disguise of 'I'm fine', the mask of 'this is enough', the costume of 'maybe someday'. Each one feels like protection. But they're just layers that keep you from remembering who you are. There's an ancient Gnostic story that haunted me. A young prince is sent from the east to retrieve a sacred pearl. But when he enters the foreign land, he forgets who he is. He eats their food, wears their clothes. And slowly he falls asleep inside a life that isn't his. Until one day, a letter arrives from home. A letter that reminds him of the mission, of the pearl, of the self he had forgotten, and he awakens. That story isn't about mythology, it's about you. You were sent here for something sacred. But this world, the expectations, the comfort, the noise, it makes you forget. This is your letter. This is the voice saying, you haven't failed, you've only been sleeping. And now, you get to wake up, you get to remember. You get to write again, not with perfection, but with presence. The sentences will remain unfinished, that's inevitable. But make sure the part you write today is honest. Make sure the man who reads it tomorrow, the version of you watching right now, knows that you didn't wait for a clean ending, you began anyway. Chapter 5, The Road You Chose. You don't lose your life all at once. You lose it in pieces, a skipped conversation, a buried instinct, a silent compromise made in the name of keeping things smooth, quiet, survivable. Until one day the road beneath your feet is no longer the one you meant to walk. And you can't remember the moment you stepped off course, only that it happened. The truth no one tells you is that most people don't crash. They drift, not because they're weak, but because drifting is quiet, it feels safe. It gives you the illusion that you still have time, but you don't. The man you're becoming is shaped by every small choice you make when no one's watching. Legacy isn't made by one decision. It's the sum of all your indecisions. The days you said not yet, the days you said maybe tomorrow, the days you convinced yourself that silence was easier than honesty. There's a Japanese haiku that says, "The barn has burned down. Now I can see the moon." Sometimes the life you planned has to fall apart so the life you were meant for can be revealed. But most men never let it burn. They cling to the barn, calling it security, never realizing it's blocking their view. I almost did the same. I kept telling myself I was being responsible. That discipline meant staying the course, even when the course no longer pointed toward who I wanted to become. But there was a day I woke up and realized I wasn't on the road I believed in. I was on the one I'd been sleepwalking through. And the future me, he was watching all of it, not with blame, but with a question I couldn't shake: why are you spending your life surviving it? That was the turning point. The moment I stopped chasing a straight line and started listening for the pulse underneath the noise. And that's where I found you again. Not at the end of the road, but in the choice to walk it with intention. Not because it's easy, not because I have all the answers, but because becoming someone worth remembering means being honest, especially when it's uncomfortable. So here's the truth: you're going to fail. You're going to hurt people. You're going to doubt yourself so deeply it'll feel like drowning. But if you show up anyway, if you keep walking even when the path feels lost, you won't just be building a legacy, you'll be reclaiming it. One decision at a time. Because the road you chose doesn't need to be perfect. It only needs to be yours. Chapter 6, The Face in the Firelight. This letter was never meant to be perfect. It was meant to be honest. A record of the man I tried to become when no one was watching. A quiet confession to the future I once feared, and a gift for you. The you who's been watching. There were days I didn't believe you existed. Days I forgot that becoming isn't about arriving, it's about enduring. The version of me that wanted to impress you has long been burned away. What's left is this: a man who tried. A man who fell short. A man who kept going. You don't owe me pride, you owe me nothing. But if you feel anything reading this, I hope it's recognition. I hope you see yourself in these lines. Because every sentence I wrote was a step toward you. And even when I doubted everything, when the silence grew heavy, when the meaning slipped away, when I came so close to letting it all go, I still kept writing. Not for the world, not for applause, but for the day you would sit in front of this firelight, hold this letter in your hands and whisper, "I remember who we were." This is the moment I hand the pen to you. You get to decide what comes next. Not because you have something to prove, but because you're still here. And if you're still here, that means the story isn't over. So take everything I couldn't finish. Take the unwritten pages. Take the questions I never answered. Take the dreams I only dared to start and build something with them. Burn this letter if you must. Let the past turn to ash. Let the fire remind you that you are not made of what you lost. You are made of what you refuse to stop becoming. And if you ever forget, if the noise returns, if the numbness creeps back, if the mirror begins to blur, return here to the flame, to the voice, to the truth you once wrote for yourself. I didn't become you to be remembered. I became you so you would never feel alone. And if you're still listening, thank you, we made it.